Okay, so thank you everybody for joining us this evening for Getting a Foot in Real Estate, sponsored by the First 10 Alumni Chapter, the Alumnae Leadership Council, and the Mattone Institute. Thank you very much for our presenters this evening. We have as moderator Stephanie Renaud from Holland and Knight, who is also a member of our Mattone Institute Advisory Board. We have Megan Paola and Ashley Williams, both of Rosenberg and Estes. Ashley's been at Rosenberg for all of 3 days, so no better exemplar of getting the foot in than Ashley. And we have Kylie Springs from Farrell Fritz, all of whom practice in real estate, and really looking forward to the discussion. Thanks to all of you for taking the time out this evening and sharing your knowledge with our students. And with that, Stephanie, take it away. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Rob, for that introduction. And thank you to Megan, Ashley, and Kylie for being here tonight. I'm really excited to hear your stories and your paths into real estate. If anyone on the webinar has any questions as we go through that you'd like answered, please feel free to put them in the Q&A function. Rob and I will be monitoring that as best we can, and we'll probably save the last 5 or 10 minutes of the conversation in order to go through some of those questions. So to start off, I'm going to ask each panelist to go around. We already know their names, but tell us their graduation year, maybe when they went to undergrad, and how did they come to practice real estate law? So Kylie, you're first on my screen. Would you like to take it away?
Sure. So hey everybody, my name is Kylie Springs and I'm at Farrell Fritz. I graduated law school in 2021. I went to St. John's for undergrad, so I went straight through, pretty much just stayed put exactly where I was. And my journey into real estate's actually kind of an interesting one. It was not at all where I thought I was going to end up. I came into law school thinking that I was going to become a district attorney and that was the path that I was going to take. And then my first summer, I worked in the courthouse and quickly realized that's not where I wanted to be, even though that's where I thought I would end up. And so then I needed to pivot and figure out what I wanted to do, and I had absolutely no idea. So I took a bunch of classes and I ended up in trust and estates law and really liked that. So my second summer, I interned at a small solo practitioner's office who mainly did trust and estates work, but ended up doing real estate work that was ancillary to the trust and estates work that we were doing there. And that's when I realized that the real estate work was actually my favorite part of the job and what I looked forward to doing each day. So then I reached out to Rob and said, hey, I think I really want to become a real estate attorney, but now I'm in my third year, so how do I do this? And so I just focused on real estate classes and tried to learn as much as I could about where I wanted to end up. And then after passing the bar, Farrell Fritz had a real estate associate position open. And so I applied and here I am.
Awesome. We'll get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty about what our practices are in a little bit. But Ashley, as a newly minted real estate attorney, why don't you take it away?
Sure. So I also had a similar experience to Kylie. When I started law school, I don't think I knew what I wanted to do. Like I was just taking a bunch of classes just to try to figure out what I wanted to do. So I ended up taking real property and I was like, okay, this is interesting. It's not, my other 1L classes, you feel like those are terrible, but real property, I'm like, I like this. Okay, let's keep going. Then I took I think real estate transactions, and at that point, I contacted Rob and I asked him about the real estate fellows position. So then I became a real estate fellows, and I started taking a bunch of more real estate classes. And at that point, I already knew like real estate is what I wanted to do. So when I graduated in 2021. I started working with the New York City Law Department in their commercial and real estate litigation division. And from there, transitioned to Rosenberg and Estes. And the difference is that the law department, we focus mainly on bringing actions, whereas We're probably the tenant side because the city is usually the tenant in these cases, and Rosenberg and Estes in the litigation division, I focus on basically defending the landlord. So that was kind of my journey.
Great, thank you. And Megan?
Hi. So I graduated St. John's in 2022, and I went to Binghamton. I graduated in 2018, and I didn't go straight through to law school. I worked for a real estate developer, and that's kind of how I got interested in real estate. And I worked in the legal department, so I spent a lot of time interacting with the attorneys and firms that they use, and also while I was there, the general counsel of where I was working went to St. John's, and he was on the advisory board for the Mattone Institute. So he said, if you're interested in real estate, you should really look into the Mattone Institute. And he brought me to a St. John's event. That's how I met Rob and applied to St. John's. And then while I was at St. John's, when I was looking for a job, I reached out to one of the attorneys that I worked with a lot at Rosenberg and Estes while I was at the developer I worked at. And they gave me an externship here during the semester, and then I've been here ever since.
That's great. That's great. It seems like Rob is a pretty common theme among alums in real estate, which is so great to hear. So
Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, so I just realized I never went through it for me too. So I graduated in 2014, so this is my last year of my first 10. I also took a little time off before I went to law school. I graduated in 2010 from Mount Holyoke College. I moved here to the city and I worked as a paralegal at another law firm. And I was randomly assigned to the real estate department while I was there, and I loved it. When it came time to picking a law school, St. John's was really convenient. I was already living in New York. It had a really good reputation in real estate. So I stayed with my interest in real estate. I worked for a judge one summer, but then I focused on getting a position at a firm for my second summer. I ended up at Holland and Knight, and I've been here ever since. So I've been here since I was a 2L summer associate, and I love it. I unfortunately did not have Rob. The Mattone Institute did not exist then, but I'm so excited that it is there for current students and alumni to really use in order to help them continue growing in real estate. Okay, so let's hear a little bit more about what we do. Does anyone have a typical day? Is there such a thing as a typical day in your practice? Okay, we're all shaking our heads. I agree with that. Kylie, what would a typical day look like if you could describe one?
A typical day. So I cover a lot of different areas of real estate law. So I think that's why I say there's really no typical day, because what comes my way in a given day could range from, a development matter to a leasing matter to a purchase and sale, or to one of the other departments coming into my office saying, hey, I have this real estate question. Can you please help me? But the common threads of my day are a lot of reviewing of contracts, whether they're contracts of sale or leases or IDA agreements, a lot of reviewing and editing, and a lot of trying to make things move forward. So whether that's getting on a phone call with a broker or with opposing counsel, or, sending emails to title, trying to get things worked out. It's a lot of just how do we keep this moving forward and get this deal closed and get it to where it needs to be.
A lot of in the weeds and getting closings done, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ashley and Megan, you at Rosenberg and Estes, you're both at Rosenberg and Estes, but you both have these prior experiences, one with a developer and one with working in public service. Maybe we could talk a little bit more about how that experience has been different than Rosenberg and Estes in terms of a typical day, and what your typical day now looks like. So whoever wants to take it first.
Sure. I will also say that, are you in litigation or transaction?
Transactions.
So I will say that Megan is in transaction and I'm in litigation, so there might also just be a difference in our day. But what I've noticed since coming from the law department and now working at Rosenberg and Estes is that with the law department, so we were bringing the cases a lot of the time, so we kind of knew what was, we knew what was going to be happening in regards to like what we needed to bring the case. Whereas with Rosenberg and Estes, because they work with clients, and this is just what I've learned in the 3 days that I've been here, but because they work with clients, something can come up at any point. They have long, lasting relationships with clients. So it might be that, we worked on something for them last week and it's, they called us today and it's something completely different. So it really could just vary. Whereas with the city, there's a consistent theme in, well, if the city's a tenant, the city has schools all over the city and, there are tenants to these landlords. So there's usually some type of, landlord tenant issue dealing with the school premises and whether it's repairs or rent. So that's kind of like a common theme where I'm getting the sense here is going to be a little more unpredictable in a good way.
However, you Megan.
So like Ashley said, I work in transactions, so I have very different work, I think. But typically, I primarily work in commercial leasing, representing landlords. So usually I'll get a term sheet, a new deal will come in, I'll get a term sheet, and I'll start drafting the deal from scratch from a form that we have for that client. And that could take me all day sometimes. And then that goes back and forth between my supervisor and I until it's ready to go out to the client, and then eventually it goes out to the tenant. And then we negotiate that until the deal gets signed. But then there's also a lot of ancillary documents that go along with leasing that I also have to draft. So letters of credit, guarantees, consents, assignments, things like that. And like Ashley said, things can come up at any time, like, oh, we need a sublease, we need to do an assignment, an amendment, things like that. Forgot what else I was gonna say. But yeah. Oh, and also, like Kylie said, a lot of moving the deal forward, following up, just trying to get negotiations to move forward, things like that.
Yeah, I think that you've all really covered what it's like to be a more junior real estate associate in that respect. It's a lot of coordination, it's a lot of following up, and even to an extent, I'm 10 years out now, but I'm still doing that on all of my deals. Even if I have, someone a little bit more junior working with me, you're always working with these clients that you have these long-standing relationships with, like Ashley mentioned, that come to you with any number of questions or concerns or something you've never worked on in the 5 years you've known them. And now all of a sudden you are going to work on it for them. And that's great that, you have these relationships that you've been able to cultivate over the years. So one of the other questions that we have to talk about today is, what do you like about your practice? We just talked about a typical day, but what do you like about practicing real estate? And is there any, challenges that might be specific to being a woman in real estate that you've noticed? I'll open the floor if anyone wants to take that one. I'll start.
I can say, okay, go ahead, Kylie.
I love real estate. I love being able to walk down the street and see a building that I've worked on. I love to be able to have something tangible to point to and say, oh, I helped my client sell that building. I helped my client buy that building. One of the challenges, and it's definitely getting better, but there are a lot of times I'm still very frequently the only woman in a meeting or on a conference call with clients and opposing counsel and title and all of that. It's definitely gotten better in the past 10 years, but there's definitely still a little bit of an old boys club that luckily we have young alum of St. John's countering a little bit. Anybody else have anything?
So I was gonna say the part that I like about real estate, and I kind of got this even when I was in law school, is it just applies to even your everyday life. Like you can take it out of, we're in law school, we're trying to, pass your class, and it's like, oh, we're learning about leasing and like you're leasing what your apartment and what does that apply to? It's like these are real life experiences that we can take and kind of internalize and learn from it. So I kind of I like that about real estate. I like how it changes all the time. Like with COVID, there were so many different changes that came about that were new that nobody was prepared for, but everyone just had to keep rolling with it. And I think real estate in general is like that. It's just ever changing, and there's always something to learn from it. In regards to, I guess, treatment, I can't say that I've just my experience of like as a woman, but I have received some type of, I guess like some treatment from being younger. I've been, I feel like the profession has a lot of older attorneys, older male attorneys, and I do get like situations where, because I'm younger, one, they don't even know that I'm an attorney, or they just assume I don't know what I'm talking about. So that's a thing.
Yeah,
I agree with everything. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I agree with everything you both said. I love, like, especially doing leasing in New York City, just walking past a restaurant or something, and it's like, oh, I put that there. I helped put that there. And it's, like you said, tangible places that you can go and check out. I went to an event last night at a brewery for a client. Like, I helped put that brewery there, and that was pretty cool. So those are the perks of working in real estate sometimes. But as far as challenges, I think I'm fortunate to not be experiencing challenges related to being a woman, but it definitely has more to do with being young and inexperienced. Like if I'm doing a negotiation and the lawyer on the other side has been practicing for 20 years, who am I to be pushing back against him or saying no, but that's, I guess, with time,
Right.
that would get better.
Yeah. I mean, but what do you do when you're in those situations? Have you found a way to...
I have to say, I have to go back to my client on that.
Yep.
Yep. That's how I get out of it.
Kylie, any other thoughts on that one from you?
I think my favorite thing about working in real estate law is that it also allows you to get a little creative, because at the end of the day, mostly both sides on the transaction want the transaction to go through. And so that's a little different than other areas of the law where the competing interests are so extreme that there's less of a give and take. In real estate law, at least I've found that parties are more willing to then eventually say, you know what, if it means that we have to kill the deal, I'll give on that. And so when interesting quirks come up and everyone needs to get their heads together to say, okay, well, we don't want this deal to die. So how are we going to get it through? What can we give? What can they give? And what creative solution can we come up with that gets this done? Is probably my favorite part, when you're sitting there and a new problem comes up that you've never had come up before, kind of like Ashley was mentioning, COVID, for example, and you need to get everyone together and say, all right, what are we going to do about it? I think presents kind of like a unique opportunity for creative juices to flow.
That's a really great distinction about this area, this transactional area of real estate,
Yeah, litigations, so on.
Might be a little bit more confrontational for her, but usually when you're a transactional real estate attorney, everything that Kylie just said is 100% accurate. You want to find ways to get a deal through. And you'd be surprised at all the fun, creative things you can put in a contract to make people happy. We all kind of touched on this in our intros, but what would you recommend to students who are interested in real estate law, or young alums who are interested in transitioning to real estate law? What things would you suggest they do? Whoever wants to take it first.
Immediately reach out to Rob. Rob is the go-to. He provided so much guidance on like just my path, even when I was at the law department, and when I realized that I wanted to make the change, I contacted Rob, we spoke about it. You know, he gave me like kind of some guidance, some advice on like kind of the path that I could take, and it made me think about like, okay, what do I really want? Where do I want to go from here? So, you know, definitely use him as a resource. If you're in school, that's even, you know, better. You can join the Real Estate Fellows, you know, program. You can still reach out to Rob even if you are not in the Real Estate Fellows program, and just be involved, I think. You know, and even like everyone said they start taking more classes in real estate. I think that's also a good start to, you know, figuring out what kind of real estate law you want to do, and just kind of getting more experience. Because I think at least for me, I know that some places where I interviewed, they actually looked at the classes that I took, and they were like, oh, you took this class, like what, you know, what did you find interesting about that? So it's good, even if you don't have actual real estate experience in like a firm or something, if you took a class or like a CLE, I think it'd be helpful to like be able to point to that.
I would say definitely take the classes. The classes are great resources. They're usually very small, so they're intimate, so you can get to know the professor, and a lot of time the professors are very successful, established partners at firms. They know what they're talking about, and they can be a great resource for getting into real estate too. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And tap into your network, right? So, kind of like what Megan was saying, she ended up getting her job because of someone she knew working at a whole different place. So, you never know who you know that knows somebody else. So, even just like making it known that you have this interest and you're looking to get on that path could be really beneficial.
I'm hearing that there are a lot of great classes over there. What were some of your most the real estate classes you've taken that were the most useful for you in practice at this point?
I mean, I took real estate leasing, and that's definitely helped because similarly, I do have a heavy leasing concentration. So I definitely tap into some of that knowledge, like probably every day.
And
I
when you
took,
start, sorry, Megan.
you can go. Go ahead.
No, I want to hear more about the classes, and then I'll ask my follow-up question for all of you.
Okay, definitely commercial leasing, because I am a leasing attorney. I use that every day. But real estate development and real estate finance were so helpful. I don't do that kind of work every day, but I know what things are and what things mean. Like it's a very helpful background to have for anything that you do.
Agreed. I don't do transactions. I'm in the litigation side of it, but I did find like I kind of like, oh, I can recognize certain terms in the documents now. I took real estate development, real estate transactions, took a class on co-op and condominiums. I was really just interested in that one, but it's also relevant.
As a condo co-op attorney, I appreciate your interest in that realm. It's a little bit niche, so I appreciate it. So you take all these great classes in law school, and then you go to practice. When you start practicing, did you find that people had unrealistic expectations of your knowledge, or was it more of these classes were a good base for me to expand my knowledge now that I'm working on these actual documents and on these actual cases?
So I think that the classes definitely gave me a strong foundation to stand on. When I came into Farrell Fritz, they didn't expect me to know more than I did. And there were a lot of times that I knew more than they expected because of the classes that I had taken, where they had started to explain something and I was able to engage in conversation with them that they weren't expecting me to be able to engage in. And then it kind of let us accept that, okay, I have this baseline understanding, and we were able to take it even further. So that was definitely really helpful to have that knowledge coming into working.
Do you have similar experiences, Megan and Ashley?
I was just gonna say I feel the same way. When I first started straight out of law school, I don't think I was expected to know much. Everyone was very much like we'll train you, we'll give you all the things, but I think just taking those classes and knowing the terms and kind of just being aware of like being able to make the connections and the conversations, I think that was kind of impressive. They were impressed with that. So yeah, I agree.
I agree. I
Knowing what
think
a
I knew,
mezzanine loan shocks people.
yes.
Right.
I think I knew more than was expected of me, and I don't think it's common for first year associates to have the kind of knowledge that we have because of those classes, because other schools don't necessarily have classes like that. So the partners aren't used to us knowing what a mezzanine loan is sometimes.
I'm very glad we're all picking on mezzanine loans in this. So a couple of the responses in the last two questions touched on mentoring and networking. So Megan, obviously you went from a developer into a firm. We all talked about Rob. What sort of networking and or mentoring do you guys seek out and that you found is helpful in your careers so far in real estate?
I will say that
I know that's been a really big, I was going to put the COVID caveat. I know a lot of you graduated kind of in the thick of COVID, so that puts a little bit of a damper on it, but curious to see what's been going on in terms of networking and mentoring in your lives.
right. So I was going to say, I skipped over this in the beginning when I introduced myself, but during law school, I went to the events that, you know, the real estate law property group does, as well as like the Mattone Institute. And I met an alumni there. And she worked at that time, she was working at a firm. It was, they basically did, they work with bankruptcy, kind of like selling like bankruptcy loans and such. And I contacted her, reached out to her afterwards. I let her know that I was looking for, I think this is my 1L year. I let her know that I was looking for, to get into the field of real estate, just to see. And she forwarded my resume and I was able to work there while I was in law school. During the summer, I think, and the beginning of the fall semester. So I think that's also important. Like when you go to these events, I think it's important to like make connections with people. It's the panelists speaking and just kind of like, you know, you never know. I mean, not everyone's gonna say that they're in a position where they can forward your resume or get you a job or a position or an internship. But I don't think it doesn't hurt to just, you know, reach out and say, hey, because if you say it and then now you're in my mind, and if I know that there's a position open, it doesn't even have to be at my firm, but if I hear something, I see something on LinkedIn, I'll reach out to you. I know I personally, I volunteer with the St. John's Mentor Connect program, and I get like a bunch of requests from there where people, the current students will like message me and like, you know, ask on tips about like whether it's job planning or interviewing and things like that. And I think all of that can help.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I mean, you guys know my story of I reached out to an attorney that I worked with, but I think going along with that, it's important to like, no matter where you're working or who you're working for, the people that you work with are on the other side. Just do a good job and be nice, because I was able to reach out to this attorney here because she liked me. She liked working with me. So I think, you know, just be mindful of that, because you never know who's on the other side. That might be somewhere you want to work, or there might be an opportunity there for you.
Yeah, I echo that. Even outside of your professional setting, hobbies, passions of yours, you never know the people that you're going to run into and end up connecting with and what they also do. So I think being nice and kind of just like keeping that all around you is always a very good thing to be doing.
Yeah, and I'll echo all of that from my experience as well. Being nice to people will lead you to a lot of opportunities. You know, I do a lot of residential deals on behalf of developers of new condominiums, so I'll do their sales. And in that capacity, I work with a lot of different opposing counsel. There are a lot of kind of frequent flyers that I deal with a lot, but they almost always represent these people that are buying. But since I have a condo co-op practice, I also represent boards. So these attorneys know me, they know they like me, and they'll recommend me to their clients once they're on boards to become the board representation, which is a really great, it's a really great thing. It's always nice to bring in a client, always feels good. And the networking events that the Mattone Institute puts on are just like a wealth of really high level real estate attorneys here in the city. I've been able to meet and connect with so many great attorneys, some of which I had worked against for years, but I had never had an opportunity to meet until we realized we all went to St. John's and we met at Mattone Institute events. So that's always really great and a great referral service for as you progress in your career, not just networking for a job, but really kind of building your client base. It's a really great thing to be able to do. I also work, I've volunteered quite a bit with the Alumni Leadership Council, which didn't exist while I was at St. John's either, but I've been both a mentor and a mentee in the program. And while it's not real estate focused, it's a really great job of connecting women alum of St. John's and hearing about different experiences and how they handle practice and life and everything that comes with it. And as a funny note, talking about, you never know who you're going to meet or in your personal circles. I happen to be a parent. I have a young child, and I was catching up with one of the moms at my kid's soccer practice the other day, and we realized that she was an architect on a project that I had worked on like 5 years ago. So we were just kind of connecting all those dots. And it's really kind of nice to like see how your professional life can intertwine with your personal life. Okay, so is there what would you recommend to alums who, and maybe graduating 3Ls, 4Ls if they're part-time, that are looking to get into real estate, maybe that didn't start out on the real estate path like a lot of us here? Megan, why don't you go first?
I think just try to emphasize like your skills that are transferable to real estate, whatever sector of it you'd be going into, like litigation. I think you could definitely transfer a lot of skills there, and transactions like contracts, things like that. I think there's a way to sell yourself even if you don't have real estate experience specifically.
Yeah, I would just second that. A lot of the skills that you're already doing are transferable. I also think it could also be a plus because you're going to bring a new and different perspective to the work. Sometimes, if we all went through the same kind of real estate path, then we all kind of have like a similar viewpoint on like cases or like theories. So for someone that's completely separate, doesn't have a real estate background, they might come with another, viewpoint. And I think firms would, benefit from that, and they look for that sometimes.
Yeah, I echo both those sentiments.
Yeah. So we're talking about all the great things that we've done, but if you had to go back and you were back at St. John's again, is there anything you would have done differently or focused on a little bit more now that you're a couple years into your careers? Kylie, you want to go first?
I don't know if I would have done anything differently because I am quite happy how it all panned out. But I guess if I knew it would still pan out this way, I would have just focused on real estate earlier because I would have known that's what I wanted to do. But yeah, I think similar to what they were saying in the last question, at the end of the day, there's always going to be transferable skills. There's always going to be a way to take what you've done, take what you know, and use it to help you get where you want to go. So that at least gives some comfort, I think, in those uncertain situations of, am I doing it right? Like, there's really no wrong way to do it, I think.
Ashley,
I would
Megan,
have done a clinic. I didn't do a clinic and I regret it. Like I think I did an externship, which was practical experience, but I think a clinic would have been just extra helpful to, to practice.
Now that everyone's speaking, like I'm remembering that I forgot so much. I did a clinic. I did the landlord tenant clinic with the with the Queens Housing Court, and that was actually very beneficial because I just with my interview with Rosenberg Estes, they saw that on my resume, and like right now I'm focusing on real landlord tenant cases for my day-to-day now. So they saw that and they were like, oh, you know, you did a clinic and you have this experience, coupled with my experience with the law department of just going to court and kind of like, you know, getting the new lawyer shakes out. I think that kind of like brought it in. So definitely a clinic for sure. One thing I would go back to, I don't have any regrets because again, I'm happy the way everything panned out, but I think I would have joined the real estate fellows group and just kind of get into real estate sooner. I don't think I started doing this focusing on real estate until like my second like 2L year. My 2L year, like maybe late fall. And I think that was late because we only have 3 years. So if I could have done it sooner, that would have been great.
it's so crazy to think that, you know, you've only got 3 years in law school, but yet we all say, I wish I had done more. We did not have anywhere near the catalog of real estate classes when I was at St. John's. I think the only 2 real estate classes I took beyond property were mortgages and drafting real estate transactions. Everything that they were just offered so infrequently, it was really hard to take them. I wish I had taken traditional real estate transactions. I feel like that would have probably been pretty beneficial to me, but it all panned out in the end. We mentioned clinics, which is great. I also didn't do a clinic. That probably would have been really helpful. What sort of things did you do outside of classes at St. John's that you think are helpful for you, maybe not just from a real estate perspective, but from a career perspective? So for example, I was on JCRED back when I was at St. John's. I was the symposium editor, which was a really large undertaking my 3L year, but I got to connect with all these professors throughout the country and read all their articles and get to know, you know, kind of working in a client service of getting their, articles published. So that was like a really great experience. And then I was a member of DRS and I competed on their mediation teams, which doesn't necessarily translate directly to what I do now, but it was a lot of public speaking. It was a lot of thinking about how to advocate for clients. So they really helped hone in those transferable skills that have also been mentioned throughout our conversation. What else have other people done? Ashley?
So I did during law school, I did moot court. And I think that was super beneficial, not even just for, it wasn't directly, it's not real estate, but it's like litigation skills in general and just like, public speaking or arguments, thinking fast on your feet. All of those I think are super helpful. So you can even do, if you don't do moot court, PTI, I've heard they have like similar experiences. So I would definitely recommend something like that. But yeah, I think that was what I did during law school.
Megan, anything that you recommend to people?
I did a journal. I was on ABI, and I think it's a lot of work while you're doing it, but I think the citations, things like that, those are attention to detail skills that are really important in my everyday drafting that I do. And also ABI has you write a research memo instead of a note, and getting practice doing that actually was really helpful. I've been asked to write things in that format. So I think that was a good thing to do in law school.
Kylie, anything you found?
I echo the journal. That is, of course, helpful. It gives you that attention to detail and also just gets you used to writing in a different way. And then also just anything that gets you in front of people. It doesn't necessarily even have to be law school related, I don't think. Being an attorney is being in the business of relationships and relationship building, because that's how you get clients and that's how you continue to be a successful attorney. And so being able to talk with people, find common ground to stand on, those are all skills that are developed by just kind of putting yourself out there with people you don't know or people you do know. And so kind of any job or hobby that gets you in front of people, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, this is all really, really great advice for people who are trying to figure out where they want to end up and what they want to do. Just generally, you know, you might think you want to do real estate today, but it might not work out once you're in it, and that's okay. What I'm hearing from all four of us is that there are so many transferable skills that we've been able to cultivate that help us in our real estate practices, but that are also just generally beneficial to any attorney. And what's great is there's an enormous network of St. John's alums to help you in whatever field you do decide to land in. So we're getting close to the moment where we would open it up for Q&A. I don't see any questions yet, but just a reminder that that's there if any questions have come up. If there's one thing you could change about the practice, about real estate practice that you have going on right now, what would it be? Is there anything you would pick? I'll tell you
Client's deadlines.
the client deadlines, excellent one. That's why you need a partner who is there, who will set realistic expectations for clients when available. Any others?
I mean, I would love to continue to see more women in the field. It's getting better, but I do think that that's something that could happen. That would be really great.
My biggest is a generic one for the practice of law, but I don't love that Zoom meetings have become the norm for every single conference call that we have. There are no more just general conference calls anymore. And a lot of Zooms could just be a phone call. It's actually one of my biggest complaints.
That is.
No,
go ahead.
No, Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Sorry to interject. I couldn't agree more. There's no reason why you need to see everybody, right? A lot of these are so easy, just would be so much easier just as calls.
Yeah.
I had a question, Stephanie. I'm not interrupting, am I?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Actually,
so a lot of our students are looking forward to summer positions. You know, that some of them have locked them down. Some of them are seeking summer positions, and they're you know, looking towards ways they could maybe distinguish themselves over the summer at the firms they're working at. Any pointers in that regard, like how what might a student do to help distinguish themselves as part of the summer?
I would say one of the best ways that summer associates and junior associates stand out is really just being open to the assignments that are coming down to them, asking questions, digging into the material, and just, you're not expected to know everything from the second you get an assignment. We've all said that in one way or another throughout the call today. But the willingness to dig into the material and to digest it as much as possible and to come back with thoughtful questions in order to move the project along is a really great skill to have early on. So to the extent you can do that, I think it really sets you off on a great footing for summer associate type jobs. Anyone else?
I would just agree, just from my experience with the law department, like I've mentored some of the law students who eventually transition to become attorneys there. And I think what they look for, and I think what other firms might look for, is consistency and like how you are with whoever you're working with, kind of just like bringing your best self in each circumstance that you interact with these the partners or your supervisors. Also, I think there is something in, again, being open to like, not criticism, but just, again, where it's a learning process, especially as your first year as an attorney. We're learning a lot. A lot of the stuff that we learned in school, it still applies, but they do it in different ways in real life. Like it's executed differently. And I think, at least for me, when I first started, that was an adjustment of like, oh, we learned it this way, and this is how technically how it's supposed to be, how we learned that it's supposed to be done. But your firm might do something specific, like differently. They might draft differently, and they might have their own process. And I think just being open to that and just kind of being able to go with the flow with that is important.
I agree. I think be present, show your face, like go to events, meet partners or other attorneys that you don't necessarily work with or you're not doing something for at the moment. Be professional. I've heard, like, not at my firm, but I've heard stories of just like the summers not being dressed professionally and not showing up to meetings on time, just not things that I think people at St. John's would do, but I've heard crazy stories recently. And just, yeah, proofread your work, ask thoughtful questions, everything you guys were saying.
Can I just add, it's the little things, the things that we are expected to do. Like, even if you're interviewing, if you're not a summer yet and you're looking for a job, like the things like when you interview, like, come to the interview looking your best, research the person who's interviewing you, have questions that, are beyond the typical, what's the day in a day? Like, just have like thoughtful questions, but also like the little things like following up with interviews. One time I submitted a cover letter while I was interviewing before I got this job. I submitted a cover letter and the person who interviewed me told me, like, I haven't seen a cover letter in so long. And I'm like, I thought that was just normal. So it's like I think the little things can set you apart and you don't even realize it.
Yeah, put thought behind all of the things that you do, whether it's how you show up somewhere, the questions that you're asking. I think when you first start out as a summer associate, as a first year associate, you can sometimes get questions that it's easy to kind of throw your hands up and say, I don't know this. And while you might not know it, putting some thought behind what the answer could be goes like a really, really long way than just going to your supervisor and saying, I don't know the answer. I think you gain a lot of respect if you go there and say, I don't know the answer, but I think it could be this because of this, or it could be this because of this. And maybe neither are correct, but it goes a really, really long way.
Absolutely. That's such a great way to phrase it, Kylie. Even if it's not the right answer at the end of the day, showing your thought process definitely really helps. And as somebody who now at this point in my career is someone you might come to with that analysis, it helps me understand where your thinking is so I can help guide you where I think you could look and where you could go if I know where you're at. So that's a really great thing. We've got some questions that rolled in on top of Rob's.
Yeah, we do. And one of them, and Stephanie, you can choose whichever one you want. One that jumped out to me was there any helpful advice you got from a professor or mentor that you still use today?
Yeah, does anybody have any answers for that one that they want to volunteer?
I have one.
Megan, no, you first.
I just, from a mentor, he said, I'm trying to think of exactly what he said, but it was basically like, if you're working somewhere, you want to do your work and like in such a way that they would miss you if you left. Like, you want to be, like, just do a good job, be a good person to work with, and like be really good at your job to where like people would be upset if you left.
That's really nice. My
Become indispensable, right?
my mentor, who I've worked for my entire career, he has this speech that he gives basically every junior associate that starts in our group, and it's called his inverse pyramid. So our practice is an inverse pyramid, and so the associates, the juniors, are doing so much of the volume of work, and it all trickles down at the end of the day, and he is the point of the inverse pyramid. And it's a little crude, but he says that all the shit flows down to me. So to be comfortable enough to make a creative decision, be okay with making a mistake, because he is always back behind you to back you up and help you fix things. Kylie talked about all these creative decisions earlier in our conversation that you can make, but you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. You're not perfect. And if you know that the people that you are working for and that you are staffed by are ready to stand behind you and help you get out of some sort of predicament or help you come up with a solution for a problem, it allows you to be a lot more creative and to think more outside the box. And I think that, having that type of trust in your working relationship where you make a decision, it might not pan out the way that you think it would. You go to them immediately and you say, I tried this, it didn't work. I think this is how we could fix it. What do you think? And know that you have somebody who's going to be there to help you to dig out of it is really helpful. And I think about that basically every time I make a decision.
So I have one. It's not like a mentor or professor, but it was like a colleague who told me this. And just when dealing with imposter syndrome and just feeling like, as a new attorney coming in, just feeling like, especially when you go to new places, or if it's a bigger firm, just feeling like, oh my God, like I'm like, with these people who've been especially when we're younger attorneys, they've been practicing for so long, and I've only been practicing for however many years. They just reminded me that we all suffer from imposter syndrome, even people who we would consider are super experienced and they've been doing this for years, because we're all human and we all go through whatever we're going through. So I think the message was just be mindful that you're not the only one to ever make a mistake. You're not the only one to not know the answer to something. You're not even the only one to have asked the question that you've asked. It's happened before and it's all going to be fine. So.
And if I might interject, be mindful of the fact that the more experienced attorneys probably don't have all the answers also, right? Because I think somebody earlier mentioned that, they'll be working across the table from more senior practitioners who will down to them or state this is the way things have always been done. Be very skeptical about that and have confidence in your own skills and abilities, because a lot of these more senior practitioners, they'll try to pull rank. Don't let them do that easily. That would be my advice. We have another question here. How do you start and expand business development? If you want to help start generating business for the firm, or both expanding your personal network and starting to generate business for the firm, what was your approach?
Anybody want to take that?
So I haven't begun to do that because I just started 3 days ago. But what I've been told, and I think this is a good idea, is when you're working on your cases, just being pleasant as a person, just making sure you're nice to everyone involved, especially in like real estate matters, because there's so many other people involved besides like the person you're going against, the opposing counsel. But also when you're drafting like your motions or your papers, it's really easy to turn those motions and papers, so I've heard, into published work. So just doing things like that, like getting your stuff published, or if it's doing events like these or like CLEs, just being participating in any of those things. I think in general, just getting your name out in the field, whether it doesn't have to be specifically you getting clients, but if it's other things and your name is always mentioned, you know, maybe it'll come by that way.
Mhm.
I also have kind of maybe a little more of like a practical approach to this question of you could be the greatest attorney in the world, but at the end of the day, your client still has to like you to want to hire you, right? And so you kind of want to have something different about you, or something that you can find common ground with a client on, because then you'll forge a relationship and they're going to think when they need an attorney, oh, well, Stephanie, our sons play soccer together. I know she's an attorney. Maybe I'll give her a call. Or, you know, Kylie, she runs marathons. And so we met at Run Club. And now all of a sudden they're in need of an attorney. And so they look to me. And so I think sometimes it's easy to get stuck in doing all of the like legal related things. But it's also, I think, important to keep your passions and your hobbies, because those are the things that will kind of help you also create relationships outside of just the legal stuff. Like, you want to do the legal stuff, of course, but then why not branch out even further and make those relationships in places that are outside of the legal networks? I think back to my interview here at Farrell Fritz, and I teach fitness side, and one of the partners that I work for does a lot of leasing in the fitness space. And so at my interview, that came up, and we ended up having a mutual connection in the fitness world. And all of a sudden, my interview for about 10 minutes just turned into a conversation with this partner. And one, it makes it way less daunting. And two, then I think, and I don't know this for sure, but later on, when they're thinking back to it, it's no longer just, oh, you know, Kylie Springs, the girl that went to St. John's Law and was on JCred. It's Kylie Springs, all of those things. And then also, oh yeah, she's the one that has that knowledge that could be useful for me. She's the one that knows the person that was my client. And I think those things go a long way. So keep the hobbies, keep the passions, and pour into them as much as you do all the other stuff.
That's really great advice.
Thanks.
The one thing I would add, anything that's already been said, sorry to cut you off, Rob,
No
is
problem.
business development isn't just necessarily business for yourself. If you're working for a firm, you also are a referral network for others in your firm. I have a partner that I work with that I met at like a firm sponsored cocktail party down in Miami who does private wealth work. So every single time one of her clients wants to buy property in New York, I'm her first call. So I've been able to bolster my internal network that way. But it also works reversely when an executive at one of my developer clients is looking for family planning and they actually live in Florida. I can give her a call and we can help each other out and make sure that I'm not just growing my business, but I'm also growing my reputation in the firm as bringing in business for others. And I know we're out of time. So
Stephanie, thank you so much. The one additional observation I have on the networking front is don't underestimate the value of networking with your peers at you know, organizations or companies, whether they're your clients or you know, organizations or entities that were across the table. Reach out to your peers, you know, the younger less experienced people on the business side, because those are going to be your allies going forward. And 10 to 20 years from now, if you do that effectively, 10 to 20 years from now, you're going to have a great, you know, Rolodex. Not that most of the people on this call know what, on this meeting know what a Rolodex is, because it's somewhat of an anachronistic concept. But you're gonna have a great Rolodex after time. So, and some of your most effective networking will be done at those more junior levels. So don't think that you need to necessarily be networking with the more senior people all the time. Okay, so Stephanie, thank you so much. Any remaining remarks?
Not for me. Anyone
We're all
else?
good?
Panel.
Stephanie, Ashley, Megan, Kylie, thank you so much. We covered a lot of ground. I can't believe it's only taken us 1 hour, but we covered a lot of ground. Thank you for your time and your support. And have a great evening. And go Red Storm.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.